we're here with the Transform Dialogues live at Transform, part of the People Strategy Leader podcast. My name is Zach.
I'm Amy.
And we're joined with
Mita Mallick.
Mita Mallick. Welcome. I'm really excited to connect with you again. I know you've been part of Achieve Engagement in the past as well. You're also coming out with your second book, which we can unpack a little bit today. Give a couple spoilers if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the work you're doing?
Thanks for having me on. I'm delighted to be here. I am on a mission to fix what's broken in our workplaces. I'm an author and a workplace strategist, and most importantly, a mom to Jay, who's 12, going on 22, and Priya, who's 9, going on 19. So hard leading kids today and creating more inclusive and kind human beings. I'm sure every parent's generation felt that way, but how hard time to be raising kids.
Well, I'm excited to unpack this. I'm also curious as we get into this conversation, if you notice a rollover into the parent life and how that also compares to being a leader in the work.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Thank you for supporting my first book. You all were so supportive. My first book was called Reimagine Inclusion, Debunking 13 Myths to Transform Your Workplace. That came out October 2023. And my next book comes out this September, and that's called The Devil Emails at Midnight: What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. And yes, I guess maybe bad parenting, tips and skills that go into bad boss behavior. Certainly, I could see some analogies there that I talk about in the book.
Yeah, so this is now both a parody podcast and a leadership podcast. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. What led you to this book? Were there certain lessons, experiences you had, or certain challenges you noticed of why, what's wrong with the bad managers out there? Yeah.
The genesis of the book was my mom was with me in New Jersey. She lives in Boston, and we got a call from her neighbor saying, "Oh my God, your foyer was flooded with water and a pipe had burst and the home was destroyed. It was completely wet." So we raced to Boston, and I'm in my childhood bedroom trying to salvage things like a first grade spelling bee certificate and a fifth grade, elementary school newspaper I was the editor in chief of. And then I find this notebook that has a list of the bad bosses I had in my 20s, and I had written out their names.
Wait, wow.
And this moment where I thought to myself, well, what if I'm in some of these? What if I'm the boss? Because I, and many people do, write about how to survive the toxic boss, how to survive a toxic workplace, but what if we are the bad bosses? So the whole premise of the book is bad bosses are not born, they're made, they're a product of their circumstances and life experiences. And I go through 13 bosses. I'm the 13th boss in the end, and I talk about my boss behavior, but I have archetypes of different bosses. I have change details because I hope these people are no longer bad bosses and that they're good leaders. And so there's really great storytelling, and half of the chapter, the rest is how not to micromanage, how not to macromanage. What do you do when employees are disengaged? All sort of lessons in here.
I can't wait to read it. That sounds awesome.
For some reason, I also got this image in my head about a video game, how there's certain stages where you got to face the boss at the end of each stage. That could be some crazy workshop where it's a team's got to go through the first boss, right? And there's a challenge or something. Okay, so we'll reinvent that. We'll create this game later. Tell us about one of the bosses.
Actually, because you brought up parenting, which is really interesting. This idea of being a helicopter parent, so you can be a helicopter boss. So every boss in the story has a nickname. This one's the Chopper, and it's the boss who loved to redo all of our work. And so there's nothing quite like micromanaging to kill the joy of work, at least for me. And this boss was the Chopper because he had a mug, and he would walk around the floor and just kind of watch and then dive in to help someone to do their work. He would do that on devices as well, if there's other offices. And I'll never forget, and I talk about this in The Devil Emails at Midnight, that a colleague said to me, well, what's the point of working on the deck? Because he's just going to redo it anyways. So what happens is it really impacts productivity because people just don't want to spend the time to do their best work. I'm going to pick on you if you're the Chopper and I'm sending you this deck that I've worked so hard on and you just redo it all, then what was the point, right? Rather than sitting down and coaching and teaching me and saying, the reason why I'm redoing the intro slide or the conclusion or this data is because let's work on it. Here's a different way to present it. And it was things like, should this be 12-point times New Roman font or 14? There's and this excessive need to control and control the work.
And to your point, that isn't something that they just developed. They obviously had someone that did that to them. And therefore they thought, oh, well, that's the way I get things done.
Absolutely. And you brought this point up earlier about the journey of a leader. And oftentimes we go from doing to directing, and no one teaches us what to do. So one of the things I talk about in the book from research I did is, if you think about manufacturing plants and the Industrial Revolution and the history room, is that I worked in a factory. I worked for you, and I was really good at, let's say, getting all these widgets down the line every hour. It's like really good at it. You said, Mita, great job. You're so good at this. You've exceeded your goals. Congratulations. Now you get to oversee him and her and him and her and her. And you're like, I don't want to do that. I just want to really be good at doing widgets. And oftentimes that our workplaces have been constructed in this interesting way that the way to recognize someone is to occasionally promote them, give them more money, and give them not the privilege, but the honor, leading a team. And some people don't want to do them. And it's like, well, why do we pressure them? And we don't teach them. We haven't taught them how to get away from doing the details. Because I often find when people micromanage, there's sometimes things going on at home, certainly during the pandemic, right? When you feel a loss of control, it's easier for me to slap you 5 times and know what you're doing and look at emails and you do your dash, your green light on. Right. Yeah. But also I don't know what to do. I'm not sure how to lead you. So I go back to doing the work I know how to.
I'm so passionate about this topic too, and think that people absolutely get thrust into those positions without any support whatsoever, teaching them how to do it. And I love that you bring up that it's an honor. It's a privilege.
It's an honor, right?
Why should we, basically take something away from someone because they just want to come to work and do a really great job every day? Like, they are a huge contributor to our organization, and we should give them just as much kudos for that.
Absolutely. And that is also what I talk about is, like, bosses make or break inclusion. Like, they have a disproportionate impact on your career. The moments when I had a really good leader, I was flying, right? I felt like I was like, the sky's the limit for me. And then the moment when you get someone with these toxic bad boss behaviors, it chips away. I start to lose pieces of yourself. And you're like, why am I even here? Why do we even work here? Because nothing I seem to do matters to that person or to the team. Oof.
One of the things you started hitting on, right? There's certain environments, contexts, experiences that lead to someone being the bad manager, right? And I remember thinking about one of the last companies I was working internally with. An employee came to me about a poor manager experience they're having, and I think they had a death in one of their family members, right? And so they're obviously struggling and grieving with that experience. And they came back into work, and the manager was like, "Okay, how's your numbers? How you doing?" Right? And so obviously that was working through a coaching moment with that leader then. But I also was thinking, all right, let's take a step back. Why does this manager care so much about the numbers? I'm like, okay, well, the environment that the leadership team of the company being very productivity and outcome driven with high extreme goals set across these leaders, created an environment where that person's feeling pressured to then dispel that pressure. So that's what I'm thinking, like, okay, that's part of the environment that's causing the leader to behave. What are some of the other things companies should be thinking about when it comes to environment? Because that feels like I can't touch that. Like, what does that actually mean?
Well, it's so interesting you brought that example up, because the last chapter ends with me, and it's called The Boss Who Couldn't Show Up for Her Team. She wasn't grieving, and I lost my dad suddenly in 2017. And I was so sudden. I wasn't grieving. I was in denial. I come back to work 3 weeks later, and my manager at the time was like, "Oh, finally you got your mojo. Like, we can get back to it." And I'm like, I didn't have the clue. Like, even the way the environment was responding to me, people expected me to get over the death of my dad. And so I talk about the importance of bereavement leave. I talk about, like, when you have your employees' backs in those toughest moments that matter, you forever have their loyalty. Like, the numbers are the numbers and they're important. But if you give that person the support and time to grieve, and everyone grieves in their own way, but even if you just show up to say whatever you need, you'll see them re-engage differently when they're ready. And that's so important. I think, one of the other bosses I talk about is the boss who showed up with toxic positivity. And so this idea of goals not being clear, you have numbers, but the goalpost is changing, the environment is changing. No one knows what they should be working on. People have special pet projects they won't get rid of, even though the company has said these are our new priorities. The teams are still working on things. And then in the story of this boss, it's like, you can do it. nothing that kills you, makes you stronger. It's like all these like positivity Instagram quotes. And the story I share is that we were literally working on this product. It was a massive innovation. It was really successful. And we ran out of an ingredient. Supply chain told us we can no longer make this product. And he was like, no, we're going to add $1 million to the forecast, but it's not possible. There's like a difference between toxic positivity and being realistic, right? And so I'll never forget when I sat down with the review that year, I got no bonus and no merit increase. Well, you missed the forecast by $1 million. Like, well, I didn't tell you to add this. We actually told you it wasn't possible. And those also, I find that those leaders will tend to surround themselves with yes people. They don't want to hear the no. They want to continue to be coddled and protected and told, no, your vision is fine. It's great, even though things might be crumbling around.
So did you tell any of your former bosses they may be in this book, or do you think they'll recognize themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. Someone asked me that. I've actually changed a lot of the details, and I've worked now for 20 years, so I'm pretty confident. And in some years, God, I've worked in some big corporations where I had like 4 bosses in a year, right? With turnover, things like that. But yeah, no, I honestly hope that they become good leaders, right? And also, like, I've been a bad boss, and so have you probably. And it's a spectrum, right? And it flips and flops. And so that's the whole point, is that, and in that moment in their career, when they were just a first-time manager, they may have been a bad boss for me. They may have been a good leader for you. And so that's also the point.
Yeah, I think that's like something to remind ourselves or think about as well. Because I've been, working in this people space. I would like to think I'm a professional culture leader. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I have bad days. I have bad experiences where I'm not the best leader and I might micromanage the presentation of, what a team member develops. So I'm wondering, as you think about how organizations respond to this and they continue wanting to move their leaders into the future to support the organization, support their people, right? Be these spaces that provide that not that bad manager experience. How might an organization might start to like approach that?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the conversations they should have, or environmental things they should set up so that, when I have a bad day, it's not really bad, but I just stay as like a solid leader.
I mean, I can joke. The answers are all in my book, so go read it. The Devil Emailed at Midnight. But honestly, the answers are with all of us.
Yeah.
So if you are a leader who can self-reflect, take the time to think about things you want to work on, go ask your teams. So I'm not just going to like find you in the hallway. What do I need to work on? Tell me. And it's like, no, and also just say, hey, like, here are 3 things that I think I'm doing well. Here are 3 things I need to be working on. What do you think? So I invite the conversation with having done some sort of a self-assessment. I was talking some of this earlier. Also, don't create a witch hunt, meaning you do the 360 review. And I had a boss who did this, gather everyone into the room. Be like, I want to know you said this and this and this. And you're like, no, right? And I think I loved the point when you were talking about that example of micromanaging, that you might micromanage in a day. This is the humility about leadership to say, Mita, I know I'm spending more time in this deck than I normally would, but I'm a little nervous, right? This is a big meeting for us. It's a new president. We're onboarding him. And so if you see me getting into the details, you're just being honest about your anxiety, but also saying like, I know this person is much more detail oriented than the last week. And then all of a sudden your team has the context. So it doesn't seem like micromanaging or actually coaching. You're like, this is why I'm spending so much time on step 2. Context matters. Yeah,
it seems like there's a lot of power and vulnerability, right? With all of this, right? Just being real about, hey, this is where I'm coming from, why I feel this pressure to be on top of. Like, it's not even a you thing, it's fully me. And there's this external pressure that I'm navigating. Let's navigate it together. Can you help? Yeah.
Be like, oh my God, I didn't realize that. Thank you for sharing. Okay, well then let's go back through this. Now that I have that context, I'm going to actually.
Yeah.
Right. And then you get more out of your teams. You get the best out of your people out of it.
I love that idea of going to your team with, here's the 3 things I think I'm doing well for you. Here's the 3 things I think I should work on. Because I think when we go to our teams and say, give me feedback, right? It's this black hole and they're like, about what? Do I say anything? Do I just give you all the positive stuff? Like, I think that's such a great way to open that door and give them the confidence to actually share with you.
I had one boss who would always at the end of the review say, so what feedback do you have for me? And the first time she did it, we all were like texting each other. She's going to say it. They're going to prep you. Because when you're there and they've never asked you for feedback and it's the end of your review, you're like, what am I supposed to say?
Yeah.
I enjoy working for you. You're like, I'm totally thrown off guard. Yeah. Where you could either do it in writing, or even if I had that conversation with you in person, you could say, Thank you so much for asking me. I'm just going to take time to think about it. I'll get back to you next week. We can regroup on what I'd like to share with you and what I think is working.
Yeah, because I feel like, there's like multiple ways that could go, right? It's like, no, it's great. Or they're like, no, you don't want to hear this feedback.
If you're not ready for feedback, don't ask for it.
Yeah.
It might sound strange, but it's the worst thing you can do is you ask for feedback and then you shut people in. Yeah. Well, I don't do that, or you make excuses for what they're saying. You're going to kill psychological safety. No one will ever come and give you feedback again until you repair that relationship. So be ready for it, and be ready to just say, thanks so much for that feedback. I appreciate your observations. I'm going to process it and think that. That's all you have to say.
So in the ethos of transform, here being on the floor, obviously a lot of this experience is about new predictions, new movements within this space, new ways that organizations are approaching the world of work, both from a people strategy and a tech standpoint. Yeah, as we kind of start to bring this conversation home, what are some of your big, bold predictions or strategies or challenges organizations should be thinking about to ensure they could stay ahead and move into the future?
Firmly believe inclusion is a competitive advantage. It's a driver of the business. And so while sitting in the US today, we see a big backlash against diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are some companies, whether that's Costco, Apple, Elf, which is a great cosmetics brand, Sephora, who are still staying the course. I know many here at Transform as well. And I think those are the companies that if we're sitting here 10 years from now, will have continued to grow. And I think leapfrog their competitors because you say it's the moral imperative, the right thing to do. It's also the right smart businessman. So I think that will be the big change, and the pendulum will swing back or it will look to.
It does really seem like it will be an unfair advantage for a lot of those companies, right? Like if they are able to provide that context and really embrace that type of culture, it really does seem like an unfair advantage to the other companies that won't.
It's a retention tool. I mean, we've lost the plot when it comes to inclusion. Inclusion is I work for you in the workplace. I feel celebrated, recognized. My voice matters. My contribution matters. The worst moments in my career is when I've shown up at work and I'm like, does anyone know I'm here? Does no one care? Right? Because we come to work, some of us for purpose, most of us to find a paycheck, and we want to make sure we belong and what we do matters. And I can tell you, the times in my career, there was one time when I was leading a portfolio that was in double-digit decline for 3 years. And would you believe I never once updated my resume during that time? Because I felt like everybody cared so much about what I and my team were doing to turn the business around, and we did. And so just think about that. It's the biggest retention tool we have. And that's why people will leave or stay as well, because they feel like they have a great experience at work where they.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was wonderful. And I'm so excited for this book to come out.
Thank you so much.
When's the date again?
September 30th. You can pre-order now on Amazon if you're interested.
I love it.
Thank you.
I can't wait to dig into it. Fight against those bosses stage on the stage. But thanks for just being a role model in this space, for leading the way, for helping bring transformation into how people view the world of work and approach it. I think that is true transformational to what we're trying to do here. So thanks for being that model.
Thank you.
Yeah.